You would probably walk right past them on the street, never registering the significance. The children of old money families are not easily identified by outward appearance, because their world is not built on immediate recognition. A defining characteristic is a preference for the understated, for items that whisper quality through their endurance, like a favorite navy sweater, its elbow twice mended with a nearly invisible stitch. This rejection of flamboyant dress has deep roots, echoing a historical shift from the late 18th century, often called the Great Male Renunciation, where aristocratic men began to favor sober, practical attire over the ornate silks and velvets of the past. The principle remains the same. Value is found in substance, not in the signal. Their communication follows a similar, quiet logic. You will not see them posting about the handwritten notes they send, a practice as regular to them as a morning meal. This is not for performance, it is a private act of connection. While multilingualism is a common trait, fluent in 2 or 3 languages from a young age, you will never hear them use this skill to correct or belittle someone. It is a tool for understanding, not a weapon for social dominance. The entire structure of their life is built around a fortress of privacy, an existence lived for its own sake rather than for an audience. Their upbringing adheres to a set of unwritten rules, a code that rarely appears on parenting blogs or social media feeds. Picture a townhouse on a quiet street, its ivy-laced brick blending with its neighbors, distinguished only by a brass knocker dulled by time and weather. Inside, breakfast is not an event of branded cereals or sugary pastries. It is simple, governed by the season, a bowl of fresh fruit, eggs from a local farm, and tea. The meal is a quiet ritual, a moment of grounding before the day begins. After the plates are cleared, you might see a 13-year-old sit not with a phone, but with a stack of ivory cards and a fountain pen. Instead of scrolling through a feed, they are composing a thank you note. The pen itself speaks to a valuation of craftsmanship, a preference for the tangible over the digital ephemera that defines modern life. The note is addressed to a Mr. Wilkins for his lecture on restoring local wetlands, revealing an education focused on civic responsibility and environmental stewardship. The practical details are second nature. Addresses are memorized, stamps have been purchased in advance, the entire process executed with a frictionless competence. This same ethos of maintenance extends to all their possessions. When a pair of favorite leather loafers becomes worn, they are not discarded. They are sent to a trusted cobbler for a second resole, prioritizing the life of a quality object over the novelty of a new purchase. The family calendar is not a frantic document of achievement stacking, but a curated schedule of meaningful engagement. You would see entries for rowing practice, a museum lecture on ancient pottery, and sessions with a language tutor. The goal of these activities is not merely to accumulate accolades or secure high grades for a university application. The objective is to build competence, which is regarded as a form of social courtesy, a way of being useful and not a burden to others. This aligns with a deeper understanding of motivation, where the drive for personal mastery and growth is more valuable than external rewards like test scores. Consequently, these after-school hours are lived, not documented. There are no videos of the perfect rowing stroke, no posts from the museum gallery. The experience is the point, not the broadcast of the experience. The central principle guiding this entire upbringing is continuity. It is a long game, played across generations. The core objectives passed down are threefold: to preserve the family unit, to serve the community that supports them, and to cultivate a self-reliance so profound it is independent of external validation. These are not abstract ideals, but a lived curriculum, taught consistently and privately, far from the distorting feedback loops of social media algorithms. The idea of serving the community connects to a much older concept, that of noblesse oblige, the implicit duty of the privileged to act with a sense of responsibility toward those less fortunate. It is an inherited obligation, not a choice for public relations. This entire philosophy stands in stark opposition to what the sociologist Thorstein Veblen famously termed conspicuous consumption. Where one world signals power by displaying wealth, this one cultivates power by making its wealth invisible, channeling it instead toward resilience, knowledge, and quiet influence. It begins not with money but with something far more volatile: attention. In these circles, attention is a currency, a finite resource you learn to spend with extreme care. You are taught that it is never given away for free. It is only ever invested, and only when the potential return justifies the expenditure. Every glance, every mention, every moment in the public eye is a transaction, and you must always understand what you are buying with it. This education starts young, woven into the fabric of daily life. The primary lesson is that overt displays of wealth do not signal success, they signal vulnerability. To a child, this is framed as a matter of simple safety. Flaunting what you have is like leaving a door unlocked in a crowded city. It invites a specific kind of trouble: the grifters with their convincing stories, the opportunistic individuals who cling to a lifestyle they did not earn, and something far more corrosive: envy. They are taught that envy is the most dangerous risk of all, because it is an emotion that seeks to tear down rather than build up. It can curdle into a negative public narrative, a story told about you that you have no control over. To counter this, the family cultivates a deep and abiding habit of understatement. This is not about asceticism or a denial of comfort. It is about a deliberate choice, made 1,000 times a day, to select the quiet over the loud. You learn to appreciate the simple, well-made object even when the more ostentatious version is easily within reach. It becomes an instinct to turn the brand logo on a bag inward, so it rests against your body rather than facing the world. The goal is to minimize the external broadcast of wealth, to reduce the surface area available for public judgment. This philosophy extends to experiences as well. Vacations are for making memories, not for creating a highlight reel. The photos go into leather-bound family albums, their stories shared over a dinner table, not broadcast across social media for anonymous consumption. The distinction is critical. One builds the internal world of the family, the other invites the external world to pass judgment on it. This discipline is not born from shame, nor is it a performance of false modesty rooted in a sense of scarcity. It is framed as a deeply practical defense mechanism, a quiet perimeter built to protect the family's privacy and its assets from a world that is always watching. What you are looking at is a highly refined form of social camouflage. This practice allows an individual to move through vastly different environments without creating friction or attracting the kind of attention that could be detrimental. The modern term for this is stealth wealth, a conscious strategy of choosing unbranded or subtly marked luxury goods to avoid the scrutiny that comes with recognizable logos. It is a quiet rebellion against the culture of conspicuous consumption, a choice to be known by your character, not your possessions. This is not an entirely new idea. If you look back, you find echoes of it in the sumptuary laws that once governed societies. These laws legally restricted who could wear certain fabrics or colors, effectively enforcing a kind of understatement on some while making ostentation a privilege for others. Today, the choice is voluntary, a self-imposed regulation. It mirrors principles from an entirely different field: security and risk management. There, maintaining a low profile is the first rule for reducing your vulnerability to threats, whether that means kidnapping, theft, or sophisticated fraud. The less an adversary knows about your resources and routines, the safer you are. It all stands in stark contrast to a powerful biological and social impulse known as peacocking. That is the drive to display flamboyant, costly signals to attract attention, to prove fitness, to find a mate. It is a strategy of maximum visibility. The world of old money inverts this entirely. Its strategy is one of intentional invisibility, built on the belief that the greatest power does not need to announce itself. It is simply understood by those who matter, while remaining unseen by everyone else. What you learn in a classroom is one thing, a foundation of knowledge and theory. But for some, The most critical education begins long before that, taking place around the dinner table where the curriculum is far more subtle. This is where a core belief is instilled, the idea that credentials may open doors, but it is character that determines your ability to remain in the room. Your degree might grant you an interview, but how you conduct yourself decides if you will ever be invited back. This domestic schooling is not about performance. It is not a mask you wear for special occasions. Here, etiquette is viewed as a kind of technology, a precise set of tools engineered to minimize social friction. The rules are not arbitrary. They are designed for a purpose. Even the simplest courtesies, saying please and thank you, are understood as a form of social engineering, subtly shaping every interaction to be smoother and more predictable. The lessons are granular, focused on mechanics of human connection. A child learns to maintain direct eye contact when speaking or listening, a nonverbal signal of engagement that costs nothing but conveys immense respect. They are drilled on how to introduce two strangers, not just by name, but by immediately providing a point of connection between them. This technique, taught in modern business schools to foster instant rapport, is here a foundational skill learned before adolescence. It transforms an awkward moment into an opportunity, a cold introduction into a warm one. With these skills, a young person can navigate almost any social landscape. A child who can move through a receiving line or host guests with quiet confidence can walk into a corporate boardroom and not feel out of place. The environment changes, but the human dynamics do not. This proficiency is a form of armor against inadequacy. It is this compounding effect of small, repeated courtesies that builds a unique kind of reputational credit, something academic grades alone cannot purchase. These practices might seem old-fashioned to an outside observer, but their power is in their accumulation over time. The rules extend to everyday conduct, reinforcing a constant state of awareness. Chewing gum in public is forbidden, seen as a sign of unseriousness. Phones are to be kept off the table when another person is speaking, a simple but powerful acknowledgement of the other person's presence. The act of writing thank you notes is not optional. It is a required practice, and it must be done promptly. This reinforces a cycle of gratitude and recognition, closing social loops and strengthening bonds. This same discipline applies to moments of crisis and grief. Condolences must be sent the same day the news is received. The logic is severe but clear. Another person's grief is not to be delayed for your own convenience. It is a profound lesson in empathy and duty. Similarly, if a child breaks something of value, they are expected to find a way to fix it themselves. They must then apologize directly, without offering any excuses. This is a key tenet of emotional intelligence, a direct demonstration of accountability that builds trust far more effectively than any simple apology. This ethos of accountability extends to every interaction, regardless of station. A central principle is to treat all staff with the exact same courtesy you would afford a head of state. This is not just about being kind. It is a strategic understanding that a family's reputation is influenced by every single person they encounter. Staff can become powerful allies, sources of loyalty and information, but only if they are treated with genuine respect. Their perception is a mirror reflecting the true character of those they serve. This entire system of belief and practice builds what sociologists like Pierre Bourdieu would later call social capital, the immense value derived from your network of relationships. It is a resource, cultivated and protected. While institutions like the Swiss finishing school Institut Villa Pirifu exist to codify these rules for high society, for some, the training is simply a part of growing up, an inheritance as real as any trust fund. The quiet hum of this social machinery, working constantly in the background, is what separates those who simply arrive from those who are meant to stay. Where a life built on new fortunes can feel like a performance presented on a stage, old money culture cultivates a very different role, that of the trustee. It is a fundamental shift in perspective. You are not the star of the show. You are the temporary caretaker of something much larger and older than yourself. From the earliest age, children learn they are custodians. They inherit not just assets, but a name, a network, and a financial portfolio that all predate their existence and are expected to outlast them. This legacy is not a prize to be won or a treasure to be spent, but a profound responsibility to be managed with care. The practical application of this idea is grounded in surprisingly humble actions. The core instructions are simple but non-negotiable. Carry your own weight, add more value than you subtract, and leave every situation better than you found it. This is not about grand gestures but about a consistent, daily practice of improvement and accountability. It is a philosophy that echoes the core tenet of environmentalism and the leave no trace principles popularized by the Scouting movement, applied to social and financial ecosystems. The goal is a quiet, positive sum existence where your presence strengthens the whole. To instill this, a child is not given simple chores with immediate, self-contained outcomes. Instead, they are assigned what could be called stewardship reps, responsibilities designed to train the muscle of long-term thinking. A young person might be tasked with tracking the household energy consumption for an entire month. Their job is not just to read the meter, but to analyze the data, identify patterns, and prepare a concise briefing for the family on how to achieve a 10% reduction in use. This teaches systems thinking, resource management, and the art of influencing others through clear information rather than authority. In another instance, a child might organize a coat drive for a local shelter. The assignment, however, goes deeper than simply collecting donations. The first step involves meeting with the shelter director to learn what is actually needed. They discover that while 50 winter coats are good, what the shelter truly lacks are new socks, waterproof gloves, and smaller sizes for children. By learning this, the child is moved beyond the realm of superficial charity and into the principles of effective altruism. They learn to use evidence and reason to understand the real-world impact of their efforts, ensuring their work solves a genuine problem rather than just making them feel helpful. This cultivates a sense of intergenerational equity, the idea that our actions today must secure or improve the opportunities available to others, both now and in the future. These acts of service are performed without fanfare. You will not find social media posts or press releases celebrating the coat drive. The work is done quietly, its value measured not by public recognition but by its actual utility. This focus on impactful action over personal branding is a form of servant leadership, where the objective is to serve and uplift, not to build a public persona. The service is its own reward, reinforcing the idea that a person's worth is tied to their contributions, not their visibility. Later, the work is reflected upon within the family. The conversation is not about praise but about process and lessons learned. What was difficult? What surprised you? What would you do differently next time? This entire philosophy is rooted in the legal and financial architecture of a trust. A trustee has a fiduciary duty, a legal and ethical obligation to manage assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries. In this family structure, the beneficiaries are future generations. The child learns through practice that they are managing a legacy, a responsibility that demands foresight, diligence, and a commitment to those who will come after them. A chain of stewardship reaching back through time and, if they are successful, stretching far into the future. And so you see how the path is laid. The names on the walls of those elite schools and exclusive clubs are not meant to be worshipped. They are a map. Children from these families learn early to read these displayed alumni letters as a history of connections, a network to navigate, not as a reflection of their own inherent worth. The institution itself is presented as a platform for opportunity, a tool to be wielded with skill, never a pedestal upon which to rest one's identity. If a family name or a legacy admission opens a door, that is understood as merely the beginning of the transaction. The expectation is clear. You must then prove you belong there through meaningful, tangible contributions. This mindset fosters what psychologists call an internal locus of control, the belief that you, not your impressive surroundings, are the agent responsible for your outcomes. It is a quiet but powerful defense against the imposter syndrome that can haunt even the most privileged, because your place is justified by your actions, not by the letter of acceptance. This strategic approach extends far beyond the classroom walls. After-school activities are selected for their utility over simple prestige. A child might play varsity sports not for the glory, but for the lessons in discipline, teamwork, and how to operate within a system of rules and camaraderie. They will study the arts, not to become a famous painter, but to cultivate taste, to understand cultural language, and to learn a different mode of self-expression. The first summer internships are rarely glamorous. They are valued for teaching the most basic professional responsibilities. Show up on time, complete a task without constant supervision, and learn the quiet rhythm of an office. Each experience is a resource, a piece of a larger architecture for a life. Perhaps the most counterintuitive element of this upbringing is the deliberate preparation for boredom. This is a core parental strategy, a kind of mental conditioning for the realities of power. It is cultivated in small, consistent ways. You might see it in the long family dinners where no electronic devices are permitted, forcing conversation or simply quiet endurance. It is present in weekends spent not at theme parks, but in the countryside where nature and silence are the primary forms of entertainment. A child is expected to sit through an entire 2-hour concert, even the movements they do not prefer, without complaint. The rationale behind this training is profoundly practical. The adult world, especially at the highest levels of influence, is filled with what you could call slow rooms. These are the long board meetings, the delicate multi-hour negotiations, the diplomatic functions where nothing seems to happen for great stretches of time. The ability to sit calmly in these spaces, to remain focused when others grow restless, is a significant tactical advantage. The practiced endurance of boredom, a skill studied in neuroscience for its links to greater creativity and self-regulation, allows them to think clearly while others are distracted. They are not waiting for the world to entertain them. They are learning to operate effectively within its inevitable, and often tedious, currents. This deliberate cultivation of patience fosters a profound psychological advantage, an internal locus of control. The child learns that their success and fulfillment are not dependent on external validation or the prestige of their surroundings, but on their own actions, discipline, and contributions. They believe they are the agents of their own destiny, rather than beneficiaries of a system they happen to be born into. This mindset is a powerful antidote to the imposter syndrome that can plague individuals in highly competitive environments. When your place is justified not merely by the name on your admission letter, but by the value you actively create once inside, the sense of belonging becomes robust and self-generated. It is a quiet confidence, built on competence rather than credentials. This perspective is particularly crucial given the controversial nature of mechanisms like legacy admissions. While critics rightly argue that such practices can perpetuate inequality and create an unlevel playing field, within these families, the narrative is framed differently. A legacy spot is not seen as an entitlement or a free pass, but as the opening of a door through which one must prove worthy of walking. It is an opportunity tied to a heavy expectation of stewardship to uphold a family's reputation and contribute meaningfully to the institution that has, in turn, shaped the family's history. The unspoken pact is that the privilege of entry must be repaid with substantive engagement, future leadership, or philanthropic support that strengthens the institution for generations to come. The family name gets you in. Your actions determine if you deserve to stay. Ultimately, this entire upbringing is a masterclass in strategic living. It teaches that the world's most venerable institutions, be they universities, corporations, or cultural foundations, are not destinations but vehicles. They are platforms laden with resources, networks, and knowledge, to be leveraged in the pursuit of larger goals. The goal is not simply to collect prestigious logos on a resume, but to acquire the skills, relationships, and deep-seated resilience necessary to navigate a complex world with agency and purpose. The true inheritance, then, is not the access itself, but the understanding of how to use it. And this is the silent mechanism that explains so much. The quiet engine behind the old saying you have probably heard in one form or another, about shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in just 3 generations. It is a phenomenon documented across cultures and centuries, a pattern so reliable it almost feels like a law of nature. The first generation builds, the second enjoys, and the third, having known only comfort, loses it all. The great fortunes that defy this gravitational pull are almost never sustained by accident. They are preserved by a different set of operating instructions, a way of seeing the world that is passed down with the same care as the assets themselves. It starts with a fundamental reframing of what money even is. For most of us, wealth is measured in cash, in the numbers sitting in a bank account or arriving in a paycheck. This is taught, both directly and indirectly, as the primary goal. But within these families, children learn a crucial distinction early on. They are shown that cash is just a single frame, a static snapshot of a financial life. Capital, on the other hand, is the entire movie. It is the complete narrative, the living system of which cash is only a temporary byproduct. This conceptual shift changes everything. It moves the focus from earning to owning. They come to understand that salaries, no matter how high, are inherently volatile and can be distressingly unstable. A job can disappear, an industry can be disrupted, a career can be cut short. Capital, however, is built to endure these economic cycles. Capital is not just money. It is your skill set, your network of relationships, your ownership stake in a durable business, or your title to a piece of productive land. These are things that can weather storms that would wipe out a high-income, high-spending lifestyle in an instant. This is why their education often prioritizes financial frameworks over mere formulas. Memorizing an equation for interest is less important than deeply understanding the architecture of debt, equity, and cash flow. A core tenet of this framework is the deceptively simple principle to pay yourself first. This does not mean indulging in personal spending before paying bills. It means the very first portion of any income received is allocated not to expenses, but to savings and investment. It is an automatic, non-negotiable transfer that treats the building of one's own capital base as the most important creditor you have. The rest of the budget is then forced to live on what remains. This discipline ensures the system of wealth generation is always being fed, regardless of the month's other financial demands. This leads directly to another unbreakable rule. You do not sell a great asset to acquire a shiny liability. You would not, for example, liquidate a portion of a well-run business, or sell a revenue-generating property to purchase a luxury car that will lose half its value in 3 years. One is a living thing that grows and produces, what you might call a productive asset. The other is a depreciating object that only consumes. The logic is simple yet widely ignored. You use the income from your assets to pay for liabilities, but you never sacrifice the asset itself. The engine is more important than the paint job. To make these decisions, one must be able to read the language of business. Children in these environments are taught to read and understand financial statements, to see the story told by a balance sheet or an income statement. They are trained to seek information from primary sources, not to form their financial worldview from cable news headlines or social media chatter. This develops an independence of thought, an ability to assess the health of an enterprise for themselves, insulating them from market panic and popular delusion. The goal is not to become an accountant, but to become fluent in the metrics of value. Nowhere is this long-term vision clearer than in how they are taught about compounding. The concept is not presented as a dry definition in a textbook. It is demonstrated as a living process. A child might be given a small portfolio of stocks and shown, year after year, how a dividend payment is not spent, but is instead automatically reinvested to purchase more shares. They see with their own eyes how that reinvested dividend then generates its own dividends the following year. This is how the abstract power of compound growth, where returns begin to generate their own returns, becomes an intuitive, tangible reality. It is a slow, almost boring process that produces extraordinary results over time. This patient, asset-focused perspective is the hallmark of the most sophisticated financial entities in the world, from institutional investors to the private family offices that manage dynastic fortunes. They are all playing a different game, one measured not in months, but in decades and generations. And it is a game played with a completely different understanding of what it means to be truly wealthy. And so the accumulation of followers, the public performance of success, becomes a kind of background noise. The real currency is not visibility but capability, a mastery developed so far from the spotlight that it might seem unglamorous, even obscure to an outside eye. You are not building a brand, you are honing a skill. This process begins early, woven into the fabric of childhood itself, where pursuits are chosen specifically because they resist acceleration. Children are guided toward disciplines that demand immense patience, activities where there are no shortcuts to competence. Think of the discipline required for rowing on a still lake before the sun rises, the endless repetition of scales on a piano until the notes flow without thought, or the slow, painstaking acquisition of a foreign language grammar rule by grammar rule. Each is a world unto itself, a closed system of effort and reward that is immune to external validation. A hobby is rarely just a hobby, it is treated as an apprenticeship. Over years, this sustained effort cultivates more than just proficiency. It forges a signature style, a unique way of executing a difficult task with an almost invisible economy of motion, a quiet confidence that needs no announcement. You can see this philosophy in the choice of sports, which often lean toward classic, individual contests of will and form. Tennis, sailing, riding, fencing, squash. It is easy to dismiss this as a function of exclusivity, of joining the right club, but the reasoning runs deeper. It is about continuity, about engaging in activities with long histories and established codes of conduct. These sports are chosen for the specific qualities they are believed to instill. The rhythm of a perfect tennis serve, the restraint needed to guide a horse over a jump, the precision of a fencer's lunge. This is a kind of body education, a physical literacy that is expected to transfer far beyond the court or the riding ring. The balance learned on the deck of a sailboat is thought to translate into an ability to navigate a corporate crisis. The focus required in a squash match might reappear in the drafting of a critical email or the conduct of a delicate negotiation. This idea that physical discipline can temper the mind echoes through philosophies from Stoicism to the martial arts, where the body is a tool for shaping character. It is a stark contrast to a culture that often prioritizes broad but shallow visibility, the fleeting metrics of influence over the enduring substance of deep expertise. This kind of focused, systematic effort to improve has a name in psychology: deliberate practice. It is not about mindlessly repeating a task, but about intentionally pushing against the boundaries of your current ability with focused feedback. The historical roots of these activities also tell a story. Fencing and equestrian sports were not just pastimes, they were foundational to military and aristocratic training, disciplines that were part of the original modern Olympic Games. They were designed to teach strategy, composure under pressure, and grace. What is being cultivated, whether in a woodshop or on a polo field, is the ethos of craft. It implies a deep dedication to process, a reverence for quality and detail, and a commitment to a path of continual, quiet refinement. This devotion is the point, the work itself is the reward, and the result is a competence that does not need to speak its own name. This physical education is seen as a direct education of the character. The rhythm learned in the eight-man shell translates into the pacing of a negotiation. The restraint required to hold a horse on a tight rein becomes the emotional discipline needed to weather a market downturn. The precision of a well-executed fencing parry informs the incisiveness of a legal argument. This is the ultimate goal: to forge a mind so steady and a will so disciplined that they can be applied to any challenge, whether it takes place in a boardroom, a courtroom, or a drawing room. The movements become internalized, creating a kind of muscle memory for handling complexity and pressure with an unhurried, almost instinctual grace. This philosophy stands in stark contrast to the modern pursuit of broad but shallow visibility. In a world dominated by the gig economy and influencer culture, success is often measured by follower counts, engagement metrics, and the speed at which one can build a personal brand. The focus is outward on being seen, heard, and validated. The old money approach is almost perfectly inverted. The work is internal. The validation comes not from a crowd, but from the quiet satisfaction of a problem elegantly solved, a line of prose perfectly turned, or a boat brought smoothly to its mooring in a difficult wind. The resulting competence is not a brand to be marketed, but an asset to be deployed, often with quiet and devastating effectiveness. It is the difference between building a platform and building a foundation. One is visible and vulnerable to the shifting sands of public opinion. The other is hidden, deep, and unshakable. And so you arrive at the final tenet, a principle that feels almost like a contradiction in a world built on perpetual exposure. In a culture that equates visibility with value, this last instruction advises the opposite. It suggests that true influence is not found in the constant accumulation of attention, but in its deliberate and careful withdrawal. The core of this idea is a practice they call strategic invisibility, a discipline of calculated absence. This is not about hiding from the world, but about mastering one's place within it. It means you do not attend every gala, your name is not attached to every venture, and you do not feel compelled to speak from every available stage. Instead, public appearances are chosen with the precision of a jeweler selecting a stone, each one meant to serve a specific, long-term purpose. Just as vital is knowing the exact moment to leave, to recede back into the quiet, and allow the vacuum you leave behind to speak for you. Applying the economic principle of scarcity to one's own presence is central to this philosophy. By making your public self a limited resource, you preserve a certain dignity and, more importantly, you preserve optionality. This concept, borrowed from strategic planning, is about keeping the widest possible range of future choices available. By not committing to a single, overexposed public identity, you remain free to adapt, pivot, and redefine your role as circumstances change. It mirrors the military doctrine of economy of force, where power and resources are applied selectively, only at the point where they will achieve the greatest effect. This discipline finds its most severe test in the management of mistakes. When a younger member of the family makes an inevitable public blunder, the response is not to engage in a war of narratives. The family avoids issuing statements crafted for social media, refusing to feed the cycle of outrage and commentary. There is a deeply held belief that engaging with the controversy only provides it with more fuel, a lesson modern public relations sometimes calls not feeding the trolls. Instead, the strategy is to absorb the initial impact. You allow the criticism to land, you quietly repair any tangible harm done, and you accept the formal consequences without public negotiation. Then comes the most difficult part of the discipline: you withdraw. The individual is removed from the public eye, not as a punishment, but as a period of recalibration. This tactical silence is designed to de-escalate the situation, to starve the story of the oxygen it needs to burn brighter. The family holds that time, physical space, and a quiet return to consistent, positive behavior are the only authentic tools for repairing a damaged reputation. This stands in stark contrast to the modern celebrity playbook for scandal. There is no highly publicized apology tour, no series of confessional interviews, and no carefully documented redemption arc designed for public consumption. The work of rebuilding trust is considered a private, long-term endeavor, something demonstrated through action over years, not through a performance over a few weeks. The aim is not to win back public opinion in a single campaign, but to let the memory of the mistake fade naturally, replaced by a pattern of quiet competence and integrity, a silence that eventually becomes more powerful than the noise ever was. This principle extends far beyond the realm of crisis management. It is a philosophy that governs their entire public life. It is the practice of strategic invisibility, a concept fundamentally at odds with a culture that equates presence with power and visibility with value. In their world, the opposite is often true. Not attending every gala, not attaching their name to every venture, and not offering a quote for every passing news cycle is not a sign of disengagement, but of discipline. It is a direct application of the economic law of scarcity. That which is rare is perceived as more valuable. By making their public appearances selective, each one carries more weight, more intention, and commands more attention than it would if they were a constant fixture on the social circuit. This selective application of presence is akin to the military strategy of economy of force. Resources in this case, one's time, reputation, and public capital are not spread thinly across every possible front. Instead, they are conserved and deployed with precision at critical moments to achieve the greatest possible effect. A rare public statement on a matter of genuine importance, or an appearance at a carefully chosen philanthropic event, resonates more deeply because it is not diluted by the background noise of constant self-promotion. This calculated scarcity serves another, more crucial purpose. It preserves optionality. In the hyper-documented digital age, every public statement, every photograph, every casual affiliation becomes a data point that can be used to define, and therefore confine, an individual. By limiting this public data, one retains the freedom to evolve, to pivot, to change one's mind or direction without the burden of 1,000 past pronouncements. It keeps future paths open. To be everywhere is to be pinned down everywhere. To be selective is to remain agile. It is the ultimate long-term strategy in a world obsessed with short-term gains. A quiet testament to the belief that the most enduring power is not that which is constantly displayed, but that which is judiciously held in reserve. The old canvas trunk appears first, its corners worn smooth from journeys you can only guess at. Stenciled initials, faded but clear, mark it as a hand-me-down, an artifact passed through generations. September sun cuts across the manicured quad as a teenager arrives at boarding school, carrying this single piece of luggage. The move-in is quiet, an exercise in efficiency without the performative displays unfolding in adjacent rooms. There are no frantic parents arranging posters, no arguments over who gets which side of the closet. Inside, the room remains sparse. You will not find a wall covered in a curated collection of unworn sneakers or a ring light set up for filming. Instead, a single, silver-framed photograph sits on the desk. It shows two figures, the teen's great-grandparents, standing before a hospital wing they helped fund. The image is not there for decoration. It is a reminder of forward-looking purpose, a quiet statement of the family's foundational ethos. This principle of understatement echoes in the packing list. 2 blazers, not 5, 1 durable watch built for a lifetime, shoes that can be polished back to life. While a roommate meticulously stages a video for social media, the teen sends a simple text to their grandmother. Made it, crew tryouts Thursday, love you. By October, the campus buzzes with parents' weekend. At a crowded reception, the teenager demonstrates a core lesson: manners before milestones. They do not seek out the most powerful person in the room for a selfie. Instead, you see them approach a visiting philanthropist, someone whose name is not widely known. The teen thanks them for funding a specific project, a new greenhouse on campus, and then asks an informed question about it, a question clearly tied to their botany class. The interaction reads as genuine curiosity, not as a transaction disguised as conversation. Later that evening, 3 short thank you notes are drafted by hand, addressed to adults they met. These notes will be stamped and mailed, their existence never mentioned or posted online. November brings a contentious race for class president. At home, the council is simple and direct: win by addition, not subtraction. There will be no negative campaigning, no thinly veiled subtweets or corrosive snark. The advice is to find something to genuinely compliment in their opponent's platform and to say it publicly. The focus is steered away from the immediate victory and toward the long game. The teen is taught to deliver on a few key promises, regardless of the election's outcome, because reputations compound slowly like interest over a lifetime. When December arrives, the holidays are not a content marathon for public consumption. They are a private ritual. The family tree is decorated with ornaments that tell a story, like a simple painted pine cone from 1964. Carols are sung in a quiet chapel, their voices filling the cold air without an audience to record it. The central event is a formal family meeting with a printed agenda. Here, each member, from the youngest to the oldest, gives a 5-minute update not on what they acquired, but on what they stewarded that year: a project, a relationship, a personal skill. January introduces a lesson in finance, framed as capital first, cash second. The teen receives access to an investment account, but it is treated as a classroom, not a casino. They learn to build a diversified portfolio, a broad index fund for stability, a bond fund for ballast, and a single high-risk moonshot investment with strictly defined limits. The real education is in learning to read the statements, to identify the hidden fees, and to calculate the corrosive long-term impact of a single percentage point difference over 30 years. These lessons are reinforced at Sunday breakfasts, which become forums for case studies on real estate decisions, the complexities of unrealized gains, and the critical wisdom of knowing when to walk away from a deal. February is a testament to the idea that craft beats clout. The discipline is relentless. It is the 5:15 a.m. alarm for crew practice on the frigid water and the hour of piano scales every Saturday without fail. The motivation for these grueling hours is entirely internal. It is about forging skill and self-respect, not about collecting external validation or building a brand. The reward is the competence itself. This foundation leads to March, when the teen is accepted into a prestigious summer program. The lesson here is that institutions are tools. The family's celebration is brief, a simple acknowledgement before the focus immediately shifts. The conversation turns to what the teen will contribute, not just what they will gain. In response, the teen creates a 2-column list. On one side, I will contribute. On the other, I hope to learn. The former is given more weight. April brings a mistake, and with it, a lesson in strategic invisibility. A friend posts a misleading video from a party, and the online comments turn negative. The family's crisis management is swift and silent. There are no public statements, no defensive posts, no frantic calls to lawyers. Instead, the teen personally calls and apologizes to 2 people who were implicated. They quietly accept the school's consequence a month without devices, and the story dies because it is given no new fuel to burn. In May, the principle of stewardship over stardom guides a senior project. Instead of a theoretical paper on wealth, the teen creates a practical program teaching middle schoolers how to build an herb garden on a $10 budget. The project demands real-world skills: navigating the bureaucracy to get a city permit, negotiating a bulk discount with a local hardware store, and showing up every week without fail to teach. A passing comment from the hardware manager to a parent, "Your kid is always early," is celebrated more than any test score. June arrives with the end of exams. The teen is not given unlimited freedom, but a spreadsheet detailing 3 structured summer options. They can choose a paid internship at a local museum, a sailing camp that includes a coastal cleanup initiative, or a language immersion homestay abroad. The choice is the museum archive, a role that involves mundane, unglamorous tasks like cleaning mildew off 19th-century letters. July is spent in the countryside, where time is marked by physical work. Days are filled with chores like mending fences and learning basic tractor maintenance. Evenings are for long dinners with a strict no devices rule, enforced by a ceremonial cedar box where phones are placed before the meal begins. The guests around the table are intentionally diverse: artists, teachers, a baker, a paramedic, and all are treated with the same deep, unwavering respect. It is here that children learn social dynamics by observing who is given priority, always the elders, and who receives extra attention, usually the shyest guest at the table. Finally, in August, the teen quietly turns down a trip with friends to help a neighbor clear storm damage from their property. The act is never mentioned again. This season of learning culminates in a rite of passage, a first tailored suit or dress. It is viewed as a tool, not a trophy, a uniform for future responsibilities. And its cost is paid for jointly by the teen and a parent, the first of many shared investments. So even the allowance is not a simple handout but a tool shaped by a specific formula. You see, it operates on a rule of thirds. A third to put away for the future, a third to give to others, and only the final third to spend on oneself. This is not a unique invention. It is a well-known financial literacy model, the kind you might find promoted by government consumer protection agencies as a way to build healthy habits early. Yet here it is not just a guideline, it is an inseparable part of the family's internal language. The expectation is set from the first dollar earned or received. This structure extends from earning to buying. Before any significant purchase, a young person in this circle must be able to answer three questions. First, will this object last? This pushes back against disposability, against the fleeting trend. Second, can you maintain it yourself? And third, what is the opportunity cost? This last question forces a calculation of what is given up by choosing one path over another, a fundamental concept in economics applied here as a personal discipline. It asks you to see the ghost of the other choice, the book unread or the trip not taken, and weigh it against the thing in your hand. It is that second question about maintenance that often stops a purchase cold. A complex piece of electronics or a high-performance bicycle suddenly appears not as a shiny new object, but as a long-term commitment of time, skill, and future expense. It is a quiet filter that distinguishes between a fleeting desire and a genuine passion you are willing to serve. This is where the lesson pivots from managing money to managing oneself. When gifts arrive from older family members, they are rarely simple cash. Instead, they are designed as seeds for future growth, carrying a lesson within the transaction itself. A common tradition is for grandparents to match the summer earnings of a teenager, not with spending money, but with an equal contribution to a tax-advantaged retirement account. This requires the teen to have official earned income, linking their hard work directly to a horizon 50 years away, making the distant future feel tangible. Another version of this is the gift of a small portfolio, typically a simple index fund. The real gift is not the initial amount but the lesson that follows, teaching the young person how to track the market and, crucially, how to reinvest the dividends. You are not just given an asset, you are initiated into the process of stewardship. The goal is to cultivate an owner's mindset rather than a consumer's. The endurance of these rules, their power to shape behavior across generations, seems to come from a source deeper than financial acumen. The entire system is anchored not in the accumulation of wealth, but in the curation of family memory. This transforms financial principles into acts of remembrance, a way of keeping the past present. This includes the sharp, instructive memory of how their ancestors navigated hardship. Stories are kept alive of times when the family had very little, when ingenuity and mutual support were the only assets they owned. These are not cautionary tales meant to induce guilt but narratives of resilience, providing a blueprint for how to act when circumstances are lean. The memory also holds an accounting of kindness. There is a deeply ingrained practice of remembering who was good to the family when they were not prosperous, who extended a hand without asking for anything in return. This creates a moral ledger, a map of debts that can only be repaid by paying that same kindness forward to others. And with that comes a connection to the original motivations for their philanthropy. The reasons why the family first began to give are retold, ensuring that the act of giving never becomes a detached, automatic gesture. It remains tethered to a specific purpose, a specific gratitude, or a specific desire to remedy a past wrong. Connecting to this longer family timeline is what seems to produce a characteristic calm, a noticeable lack of urgency or anxiety. This psychological concept of generativity, the deep concern for guiding the next generation, is the system's emotional engine. By situating your own life within a multi-generational story, your personal successes and failures become less dramatic, part of a much larger arc. You rarely see the children raised this way in the public eye, not because they are hidden, but because they are genuinely occupied. They are busy with the slow, unglamorous work of personal cultivation, learning a skill, mastering a subject, tending to a project. Their attention is turned inward toward the process, not outward toward the performance. In a way, this entire framework functions as an informal family constitution. It is a living document of shared values and rules for governance, ensuring that the family's vision outlasts any single individual, carried forward not by command, but by a quiet and steady memory.